Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about local tops and global tops. I get a lot of questions about what is a market cycle, what defines a market cycle, and could we be nearing the end of a market cycle in the not so distant future? If you guys like the content, subscribe to the channel. Let's go for 200,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up. Check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So the most common question I get these days is, what's a market cycle? There's a lot of new people in the space. They want to know what's going on. Well, the first thing I should say is that we are in a very heated time in crypto. Okay, things are very heated. Things are going up like crazy. They could continue going on up for several more weeks, maybe even several more months. However, I do think that we are approaching, in the not so distant future, a local top. And what I mean by that is I think there will be a significant cool down phase. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go down 85%. If it were to go down, say, 85% and enter into a 1-year bear market followed by a 1 to 2 year accumulation phase, then in hindsight, we would say it is a market cycle top. However, I think that we are probably going to be approaching a local top at the very least in the next few weeks or months. Okay, and to clear this up, I would consider this to be a market cycle top. I would consider this to be a market cycle top, and I would consider this to be a market cycle top. So far, we've had 3 primary market cycle tops for Bitcoin. We've also had major bear markets and accumulation phases. We had an accumulation phase here, we had one over here, and we had one over here. So we've had 3 primary accumulation phases for Bitcoin. Also 3 market cycle tops. You could also say that this was an accumulation phase as well. This was right when it first launched, okay? So we've also had local tops, and local tops can come, and they're not necessarily the end of the market cycle, but it could indicate a significant cool down period before ultimately trending higher. We had one here. You could even argue we had one in 2019 where we had a local top at 14K and then we went all the way back down and then it continued much higher. So I think that Bitcoin in the next few weeks, maybe months, right? We don't know for sure, is approaching a local top. And I think what will happen is we'll see a pullback that's not necessarily just going to be held as support at the 20-day moving average, right, or at the 50-day moving average. I think so many people have gotten so used to that mindset that it only ever goes up, that there will come a day in the not so distant future where we will cool back down for a while. But I don't think it's going to be like a 3-year phase where, when we're in between, say, 50K and then the next time we get to 50K. Like, I don't think it's going to take 3 years for us to get to whatever we end up dumping from. So far, the local top that we have is at 58K. And there's a decent chance that we're in a dead cat bounce right now. And if we are, then a lot of altcoins could make major moves over the next few weeks if Bitcoin is unable to put in new all-time highs, and as long as it doesn't immediately capitulate. Okay, so if that were to happen, if 58K is a local top, then we could end up trending back down for a while, finding some support much further down, and then gearing back up for another run. There's a lot of people that will say, okay, we're going to find support at the 50-day. I've done that as well, the 20-day. Some people will say 43K, some people 40K. But wherever the local top is, whether it's at 58K or if in a few weeks we trend higher, maybe we go up to 75K, maybe we go higher than that. Okay, it's possible. It's certainly possible, and I don't think anyone would necessarily be surprised over it. So whether 58K is the local top, or if we go to, say, 80K, and 80K is the local top, I do think that sometime in the next few weeks or months, we will have a significant pullback where it doesn't just hold support where it's been holding week over week over week, and we don't see an immediate bounce. And that could, at the very least, imply us going back to the 20-week moving average, at the very least. And the 20-week moving average today is at 29, or it's at 31,000. Okay, if we look at it over here, the BLX doesn't have it updated, but it's a just over 31,000, between 31,000 and $32,000. Looks like it's right around 31.7K. So at the very least, we will need to consider the implication of going back to our bull market support band. However, we also would like to consider the idea that it's possible that whenever we do have a correction, because it's been so long since we tested it, we might actually break below it. During the last cycle, when we went this period of time without testing it, we broke below it. During the cycle before, we went a long time without testing it, and then we actually broke below it, and then we ended up trending up a few months later, but it did not stop us from temporarily breaking below it and having a lot of fear in the market. This was like an 80% drop, okay? So what I would say, as I've said before, I talk about local tops, I talk about global tops all the time on the channel, and so many people are asking me, well, what does that mean? Like, what is a market cycle top? What is a local top? The reason I don't think we are about to imminently approach a market cycle top, at least not in the next month, if you look at this chart, again, I've showed this chart before, it does not indicate that 1.5 trillion would be a market cycle top. If we were to go back down here and cool off for a while and track the red line, I don't think we would look at this chart and say that this is a market cycle top when it couldn't get much closer to our upper green band. Okay, we would say it's a local top, perhaps like 2019 was. Okay, and if it does do something like this and trends back down, and then we ultimately trend up higher later on and do something like this, and then come down and then go into, say, this like multi-year bear market and do something like this, this is what I would call the market cycle top. These I would simply call local tops if it were to play out like that. Now, the hard part is that a local top can actually be that way for a while, right? I mean, it could act as the local top for 6 to 12 months, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the market cycle top. For the market cycle top, we generally have to wait like 3 years or more before we get back to those levels. So what I'm saying here is that I think there's a decent chance we have a cool down period in the not so distant future. If you look at our regression band, one of the things we've discussed before is that we're never able to make it to the prior regression line. Okay, so this cycle peaked in this red line, this one peaked in the purple, and then this one peaked here. So far, we are actually at the top of this green band, which is 2 lines below this one. So far, each cycle peak has dropped around 2.5 log lines. Currently, this one is 2 lines down. If we were to continue up much higher in the short term, the top of this band currently would be at 100K. Okay, so is it possible we go to 100K before a local top ensues? It's certainly possible. We can imagine a world where it goes to 100K, it cools back down to maybe 30 or 40K even, and then trends up later in the cycle to go up to, say, between 100 to 200K or something. Okay, we can imagine a scenario like this, and it does not necessarily mean that 100K is the market cycle top. However, if things were to cool down here, if we look at the market structure, we can see that we generally have been between these 2 lines for our accumulation phase. And the nice thing, or there was more intra-cycle volatility in this one. We came up to the top of this and then back down even further down. And then now we've come up all the way back up here, which is where we've actually held resistance at before. Okay, so we have to keep in mind that it's theoretically possible that 58K was the local top and that we trend down for a little while before ultimately trending higher. Okay, so this is just something we want to keep in mind. We don't know where the local top is, whether it's at 50K, whether it's at 65K, 72K, 85K. We don't know exactly where it is, but it does seem like a lot of indicators are flashing that Bitcoin is getting very overheated and that the market should calm down for a little while at some point. However, if history is any indication, these things can last a lot longer than anyone can realistically predict. It's possible that our current heated phase could last several more weeks or even several more months before cooling down for a while. So we want to keep that in mind. We also want to remember that even in the event of a correction, there still is a lot of time. I do think that time is on our side. We've often talked about local tops in the past, and that if we have a local top, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the market cycle, but for people that need the money within, say, 6 to 12 months, it could be somewhat challenging to just sit on some losses for a while. So this is why I think people need to be responsible and remember not to or don't invest more than you can afford to lose, and invest in projects you believe in for the long haul. So the reason why I'm putting out this video is because I want to prepare people when there is a sizable correction, because so far during this bull market we haven't really had one. We had a 31% correction followed by like a 25% correction, but we haven't had one of those juicy 40%, 50% corrections or anything like that quite yet. I do think we will have one this market cycle, at least one, but it's hard to know exactly when that will come. The other reason why I think things are getting fairly heated is if you look at our plain regression bands, we are getting close to the top. In fact, I mean, we haven't really gone to the top of the regression band. For us to get there today, it would imply going to over $86,000. So if we were to go to $86,000 today, note that it goes up by about $100 a day. If we were to go to $86,000 over the next few weeks, then we would be reaching this macro level trend line that, if we look back in time, was in fact indicative of market cycle tops. Okay, it was. But we're trying to reconcile this with this other model that, in terms of the total cryptocurrency market capitalization, shows that we're not really yet at a market cycle top. Now, if Bitcoin were to go to 100K in a couple months, let's imagine a world where we go to 100K. Let's say we come back down and then we ultimately go back above it in August, and we go to 100K and then we come back down. And when we go to 100K, imagine a lot of altcoins start pumping like crazy, and then the entire asset class as a whole goes to, say, $5 or $6 trillion, and we end up coming up to this level, then we might want to be more cautious. Okay, we might want to be more cautious in that scenario. However, at the current time, like where we are currently, I don't think that a 58K Bitcoin is a market cycle top, though there is a chance that it's the local top, and if it's not the local top, then wherever the next run takes us, if we go up to, say, 70K or something, there's a decent chance that's going to be a local top before a substantial cooldown period, a reaccumulation phase, followed by maybe another run up later on in the year, or maybe next year. Okay, so I hope that this sort of clears up what we talk about when we talk about market cycle top versus local top. This is a local top. Okay, this over here is a local top, where they're not necessarily the market cycle tops, but they did precede fairly substantial cooldown phases or reaccumulation phases. We even had some local tops here, if you want to call them that, before we had 40% corrections. Okay, we had plenty of them last cycle. So we have to consider that it is possible that we do cool down for a while. Now, when things do cool down, let's prepare ourselves for this, because there's a lot of people in the space right now because everyone's excited. A lot of people are making a lot of money. When things cool down, a lot of people tend to naturally just stop thinking about crypto. They sell their crypto and then just move on, and then they wait to hear about it in the news again. Remember, the people that stick around when things cool down are generally the people that make the most money when things start heating up again. And I do think cryptocurrency is here to stay. I think it'll be one of the best investment vehicles of the decade. So I think it's here to stay. There's going to be a lot of developments in the space over the next decade. There's nothing necessarily wrong with just having a hold strategy. If you want to do that, you don't even worry about what the prices do in the short term. You're just going to hold for the next 10 years, and you'll check back in then. Okay, so what I would say, again, to clear everything up, is that I really do think that in the not so distant future, we will have a local top. And one way that we could somewhat try to predict that is if Bitcoin is unable in the next several weeks to put in a new all-time high, if it's unable to go to 58K, then it might start looking a little weak. And during that time, it might lead to altcoin rallies because people start to think, okay, well, Bitcoin's done. Let's actually FOMO our money that we made on Bitcoin into altcoins, and this could lead to altcoin mania. If that were to happen and you see a lot of altcoins going through the roof, then there's a decent chance we are coming to a local top before things cool off for a while. So consider that scenario as we continue to navigate this market cycle. Now, the last thing I want to remind you of is that we have to see how things play out on the charts. Okay, I'm saying I do not think right now we are near a market cycle top because of this chart. But remember, if things were to trend up, the current market capitalization of the entire cryptocurrency asset class is around 1.5 trillion. Okay, but if things were to trend up to say 6 trillion or something in a couple months, then we would want to be very cautious about it not necessarily being a local top, but potentially a market cycle top coming way before a lot of people could have ever imagined it would have come. Okay, so we have to consider that possibility. But because we're not there yet, because that actually hasn't happened, then I don't think we're in a spot where we can say that we're even close to a market cycle top, because I think the entire asset class as a whole will need to trend up at least another 3x or so at this stage of the cycle for us to consider it to be a market cycle top. If you're new to crypto, be prepared as we navigate this cycle. Be prepared for substantial pullbacks. Okay, be prepared for it. Wait for it. Hope it happens. In fact, if you want to make a lot of money, a lot of times the real money is made during those pullback periods. Okay, so that will represent an opportunity. We'll cover it on the channel just as much as we're covering the bull market and the crazy mania. If we pull back and things are bearish for a few months, we'll cover that as well, because that is where the real money is made, and that is why we made so many videos over the last few years preparing people for these mania phases that happen. This is not the first mania phase we've had in crypto, and it will not be the last. It will not be the last. We'll ride this one as long as we can. Whenever it cools down, we'll regroup and prepare to do it again. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let's go for 200,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up. Check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. And remember, we have the premium list sale. You can find a link to that. We'll keep it going for about 6 or 7 more days. Check it out, lock in the lower rate. Thank you guys for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel, turn on alerts. I'll see you next time. Bye.